There's a lie we often believe without even realizing it, that thinking clearly is optional. Something we'll get to later when life slows down, when things settle. But here's the truth Scripture reveals to us. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Not as he wishes, not as he pretends, but as he thinks. Your thoughts aren't just background noise, they're the foundation of everything. Your decisions, your direction, your devotion. And if that foundation is unclear, everything built on it will be unstable. This isn't about positive thinking or mental hacks. It's about something far deeper. The spiritual discipline of clear thinking. The discipline that refuses to let the world dictate your mind. The discipline that examines every belief before it becomes a conviction. The discipline that asks, is this thought from God, from me, or from somewhere else entirely? If you're tired of being ruled by noise, by confusion, by thoughts that don't serve your calling, this is where the shift begins. Part 1. Reaction versus response. Most people believe they're thinking when really, they're just reacting. The difference is subtle but powerful. A real thought is intentional, built, examined, owned. But reactions, they're fast, automatic, and almost always invisible. Someone raises their voice and suddenly you're defensive. A choice appears and anxiety tightens its grip. You avoid it telling yourself you're being wise, but if you trace it back, that wasn't a decision. It was a triggered response. Scripture says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Not because anger is always wrong, but because reactive anger rarely leads to righteousness. We live in a world that encourages speed, not depth, and at that speed there's no room for pause. Everything is urgent, everything is loud, but clarity can't exist in chaos. Clear thinking doesn't rush, it steps back. It asks, where did that feeling come from? What am I assuming here? Most people never ask those questions. They never question the voice inside their head because they assume it's their own. But often it's not. It's the voice of a parent you tried to please, a crowd you feared, a belief you absorbed without consent, and without knowing it, your mind becomes a theater for everyone else's story, except your own. The Stoic principle Epictetus said, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. That holds a brutal kind of freedom, because if your judgment creates your suffering, then your clarity can destroy it. But Scripture takes it deeper. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. This isn't just about better thinking, it's about a different kind of thinking altogether. Thinking that's rooted in God's truth, not the world's patterns. Thinking that's grounded in His character, not your circumstances. Thinking that's aligned with eternity, not just the moment. Part 2. Emotion-led versus truth-led decisions. Here's what happens to most of us. We feel something, a pull, a spark, a rush of urgency. Maybe it's an attraction, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's excitement dressed up as destiny, and without even realizing it, our mind starts scrambling to make it make sense. We don't start with reason, we start with emotion, and reason comes limping in afterward, trying to justify the choice our body already made. It feels right, we tell ourselves. It must mean something. But what if that feeling wasn't wisdom? What if it was just familiarity? And what if the familiarity was rooted in your oldest wounds? There's a strange comfort in what we already know, even if what we know is pain. You might find yourself drawn to people who remind you of your past, not because it's love, but because it's recognizable. You might feel urgency around an opportunity, not because it's right, but because you're scared of missing out. You think you're being intuitive, but you're actually being pulled by fear. And when fear leads, logic doesn't resist it, cooperates. The biblical reality, the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? This isn't a condemnation, it's liberation. Because once you realize your feelings can't always be trusted, you stop being ruled by them. You start asking, is this desire or desperation? Is this intuition or impulse? Is this God's leading or just my fear in disguise? Clarity doesn't follow emotion. It holds it still. It lets it speak, but it doesn't let it lead. When you think clearly, you become aware of the difference between what you want and what you're addicted to, between what feels familiar and what's actually good for you. That awareness changes everything. You stop rushing to justify every emotional spike. You stop calling every pull a calling. You start recognizing that your brain can't always be trusted to tell you the truth in the moment, especially not when it's trying to avoid pain. Part 3. The Illusion of Certainty. Most people think they're being careful when they wait. They believe the longer they hold off, the more clarity they'll gain. They don't realize what they're really doing is waiting for certainty, a kind of perfection that doesn't exist outside their imagination. I just need a little more time, they say. Once I'm sure, I'll make the move. But underneath those words isn't wisdom. It's fear. And fear, when it wears the mask of logic, convinces you that hesitation is safety. But here's the truth. No one is ever completely ready. Not for the big decisions, not for the hard conversations, not for the moments that demand growth. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." But Scripture said it first. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. The Stoics knew the mind can be its own tormentor, but believers know something deeper. God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. You don't get clear and then move. You move, and the fog starts to lift. Part 4. Filtering the noise. We live in the age of information, yet most of it leaves us more confused than empowered. There's no shortage of opinions, explanations, and strategies. Scroll long enough and you'll find 1,000 ways to live, think, heal, win, grow. It feels like wisdom, but it rarely changes anything, because clarity was never about how much you know. It's about knowing what to ignore. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Your mind is a garden, and if you don't guard what gets planted there, you'll spend your life pulling weeds. Not everything deserves a place in your mind. Not every voice should have access to your inner world. You need boundaries, not just in your relationships, but in your consumption. The most dangerous voice in your life isn't always the loudest. Sometimes it's the quiet influence of unexamined input. Part 5. Defining what you're optimizing. For most people don't know what they're optimizing for. They think they do. They say words like peace, freedom, love, and meaning. But if you observe their actions, something doesn't add up. They say they want peace, but they never put down the chaos. They say they want freedom, yet keep chasing the kind of approval that makes them a prisoner. They say they want to feel whole, but they build their lives around fragment status, followers, attention, noise. Whether you're aware of it or not, you're always optimizing for something. Every choice you make is a vote in the direction of what matters most to you. Not what you say matters, what actually governs your choices. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Your outcomes don't contradict your values, they expose them. So ask yourself, what am I really optimizing for? Is it comfort or growth, acceptance or authenticity, the approval of people or the presence of God? Part 6. Owning your mind. Most people walk through life with minds wide open, not in the enlightened sense, but in the vulnerable, unguarded way. Every voice is allowed in, every comment gets a reaction, every opinion becomes a weight on the scale, and before they even realize it, they're no longer thinking for themselves. Their mind has become public property. But clarity, the kind that anchors you, steadies you, doesn't come from exposure. It comes from ownership. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. To own your mind is not to shut it off. It's to be discerning, selective, intentional. It means declaring, "This mind is mine, not for sale, not up for auction." And that kind of clarity, that's not passive. It's earned, it's enforced, it's lived. The discipline of clear thinking clarity isn't just about making better choices, it's about understanding the landscape in which those choices unfold. It's about asking not just, what should I do, but what system am I operating inside? Whose frame am I thinking within? It's about refusing to let the world dictate your thoughts, your direction, your devotion. And it's about remembering what Paul wrote. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. This isn't wishful thinking, it's intentional thinking. It's the discipline of aligning your mind with God's truth, not the world's noise. So guard your thoughts, filter ruthlessly, think with depth, move with clarity, because in the end, the strongest minds aren't the ones with the most information. They're the ones with the strongest filters, the ones who've stopped letting everyone else narrate their life, the ones who've realized that confusion isn't just a lack of answers, it's an overload of noise. And once you cut through the noise, what's left isn't just silence, it's power. Clean, quiet, unshakable power. The kind rooted in God's truth. The kind that moves differently. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. If this resonated, I'd love to hear which part spoke to you most. And if you know someone who needs this reminder today, share it. Sometimes the clearest message is the one that interrupts the noise. This is Mindset and Grace.